Listening to How I Sell, a podcast built for early career sales professionals. You'll hear stories, best practices, and guidance from top sales leaders on what it takes to become a sales superstar. Today's episode is made possible by Ramped Careers. Ramped is on a mission to build the next generation of workforce-ready talent. Joining us today is Brandon Roberts, Chief Revenue Officer at TSG. Brandon is a professional baseball player who has made a career switch into sales and has not looked back since. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's fun to be here, so I'm excited to dig in.
One of the questions that I love asking our guests, and sometimes it can be a little bit of an annoying question, but I'll ask you anyways. For those that don't know who you are, who is Brandon Roberts?
Brandon Roberts. Brandon Roberts is now a revenue leader and a leader developer. So that's what I like to think of myself as. Is one of my main jobs is to develop other leaders, other sales professionals, but really the leaders that lead those sales professionals. So outside of that, I'm a family man. I have 3 kids and a wife, and I live here in California. And I'm also a former professional baseball player, which is going to stick with me for the rest of my life because of everything that I learned and everything that I went through and all the experiences that I had for those first 8 years in my early 20s. So yeah, interesting question, but I guess that's how I answered it.
Let's talk about those first 8 years. So you started out wanting to play professional ball. Looks like that were instrumental in defining who you were and continue to be today. Where did that spark come from? And I ask that because I'm interested to hear whether there's a common thread there. Why did you choose professional ball?
It's so funny. It is something that I wanted to be since I was a kid. I mean, in the backyard, mimicking, the big leaguer, the superstars. My favorite player was Ken Griffey Jr., mimicking his swing and his style, on the Little League field. And so for some reason, I always had a desire and a passion to be a household name and to play at the elite level and to be on a big league ball club. And so nowadays, you really teach that you want to play multiple sports as a kid. You want to play football and soccer and baseball and basketball and get the full rounded spectrum of that. And for whatever reason, I only wanted to play baseball all through junior high, all through high school, through college. So it was a little different there. But I always loved the sport for some reason. I loved everything about it. And so that was my passion.
And at no point did you have any second thoughts? I mean, it's hard, man. It's very hard. I mean, folks know statistically the number of folks that can kind of make up the chain. I think a lot of folks want to play professional ball, and they do, but very few make it. And it's a lot of hard work. At any point, did you feel like, maybe not too much work, or you didn't have that as a concern at all?
I never felt like that. I always knew that there was very slim chances, obviously to make it to the major leagues or to even make it to professional baseball or to the collegiate level even. You know your chances, but there was never a thought of quitting or giving up because really you're in the moment and you're on a team and you're having fun. And it's just a fun thing to be a part of and to do and to, I don't know, be part of your life. And so, yes, there was times where when I was in high school and I wasn't necessarily getting the college looks that I thought I was going to get around like, okay, well, where's this going to go? Okay, well, maybe I'll just play in college and I'll get a good education and that'll be it. But, so there was doubts as to how far I could make it because I was a little bit smaller and I was a little skinnier in high school and whatnot. But I never lost the drive to want to play and to want to work hard and to want to improve. Because not only do you have a sight set on a long-term vision, but you want to be successful in the year that you're playing. So when I'm playing like my senior year of high school, for example, I'm not working hard to become a major league baseball player. I'm also working hard so that I can win the league, in terms of where we were at. So yeah, I never lost sight of working hard and being dedicated towards being better there.
And so you keep pushing yourself and you make quite a bit of progress. And it sounds like halfway through, um, owing to a combination of factors, some of which it sounds like an injury, you had to go through what I call a great reset, where all the effort that you put in, all the success you've seen, the fame, the recognition, got you from A to B, but now you're back at A again. Is that a fair way of characterizing it? Is that what happened?
Yeah, and I still remember my very last professional baseball game. It was in 2012. It was on Labor Day, a Monday. We had a day game, and it's funny. The last day of the season for professional baseball players, they like speed up the game, right? You play faster. The pitchers only throw strikes. You swing at the first pitch. You're like trying to get out of there in 2 hours so everybody can go with their family. And I remember my last at bat, it was a left-handed pitcher throwing a left-handed slider, and I hit a double off the opposite field wall, which is something that I literally never did in my 8-year career because it's the hardest thing to do as a left-handed batter. And I still remember that moment. And so anyway, so afterwards, I get in my 2001 Chevy Tahoe, and I pack up my truck with everything that I own, and I drive 18 hours back from Colorado to California. And I knew that I was done with my career, and that was my last day because I had faced injuries, and I knew I was moving forward in my career. And I've never cried so hard in my life because I was giving up the dream that I had, and I had fallen short because I was in AAA and I wanted to be in the big leagues, and it just wasn't happening over the last couple of years. And I think when I reflect back on that moment, that's what drives me now, because I look back at my last couple of years of playing baseball and I recognize that I wasn't the first player to show up at the field and work hard, and I didn't do extra video, to refine my skills, and I didn't take extra batting practice, and I thought that I had hit my ceiling in my capabilities, and I was just a AAA ball player, and that was as good as I was going to get, and I kind of capped my skill sets. And now that I've learned so much more about growth mindset and practice mindset and continual development and continual application of your skills and development, I just look back and I'm just like, what was going on in my brain? It almost puts a chip on my shoulder, and I'm like frustrated at my younger self and say, I will never let an opportunity slip out of my hands again. And so that's what drives me now, and why I've been successful in my career after baseball to continually pursue advancement, is because I know every single day matters, and every single opportunity is right here in front of me. And it's just something that I get a little emotional about, because it was a childhood dream that I wanted, and I was right there, and I was so close. In the last couple of years, when I reflect on my mindset, I'm just like, my mindset wasn't where it needed to be, and I never want to make that same mistake again. So I don't know if that's how you wanted me to answer that, but it
No,
gets me a
no, it
little emotional.
makes. I'm actually feeling my legs because I have a bit of a goosebump situation going on here. But where does that extreme accountability come from? Let me put a different spin on it. You reached what 98% of the population that want to reach could not have reached. And your first instinct as you were going back and going through that long drive was to, I don't want to use the word blame because it's a different thing, right? When you blame yourself, there's no remedy. You're angry at yourself and you don't quite have a growth mindset. And yet the only thing that you saw was you held yourself accountable for the outcome of what happened and not anything else, right? But where did that come from? This notion of, I'm going to start with myself. I'm not going to start with external situation. I'm not going to look back and say, hey, you know what? I had a good run. I did better than most other people could have. That's the piece that I'm trying to understand, because you make it seem like that's what everybody could and should do, and yet most don't. I'm trying to figure out who built that value system in you. Was it innate?
I don't know, but thinking about external influencers and other things and blaming and causing excuses, I mean, none of that is helpful to anything, right? I mean, taking full accountability is what's most important, and understanding what's in your control. And regardless of the politics of the organization or the position that I was in or the players that I was going up against or the injuries that I had that were arguably out of my control, the truth of the matter is that I didn't have the best mindset in my last couple of years, and I didn't work extra hard, and I didn't apply myself like I know I could have and gone over and beyond. And by all means, I wasn't lazy. I was working hard, but I didn't work as hard as I could have. And that is 100% my fault and my accountability. And when you think about me driving away from AAA ball, and driving for 8 hours through deserts and crying because I'm leaving my career and I'm failing because I didn't make, the goal that I accomplished, it's essentially like hitting 99% of your quota. No sales rep is going to be like, I hit goal. Well, no, you didn't. You hit 99%. You missed goal. That's the definition of a goal. And that's why your multipliers kick in once you get to 100%, because that's the goal that you're going for. My goal was to play in the major leagues, and I was at 99%. And so that's why I was like, yep, I 100% failed. It's 100% my fault. And guess what? I'm not going to make that mistake again in these new opportunities that I'm going to take on with my career.
Well, if anyone had any questions about why you've done so well in sales, there's your answer right there. I don't think anything more needs to be said. Incredible run up so far, and you're at this pivotal. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking? Because I go through a quarter life crisis every so often, so this is new, right? It requires a reset. How old were you? What was going on? Personal situation? What was the deal?
So I was drafted when I was 20, and that was when I hadn't even finished college yet when I started playing pro ball. So it's a really funny story because I had to go back every single quarter after a season and take a quarter of school so that I could finish up my degree. And so really this 8 years of professional baseball was mixed in with finishing my undergrad as well as doing my MBA online through this period. But I believe I was 27 when I retired, with zero business experience whatsoever. All I had done was play baseball. And the only exception to that was the prior off season. I had a good colleague that ran a part-time SDR team. And so that was my first gig in sales. I was training for spring training, and I was working on baseball, but then I would go in the office for about 4 to 6 hours, and I would just blast cold calls over and over and over, just straight up 60 calls a day. So that's how I got my start.
Why did you take that? Why did you take that job though? There's other things you could have possibly done. Did you ask yourself this question? You said, I think I could do this. Like, talk to me a little more about, and there might not have been any. Maybe you just needed to get paid and you're like, well, available, I'll take it. But I suspect there must have been a little more thought, maybe. Why did you take it?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I didn't do it. I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the experience, and so that I could have something else. Because at that point in my baseball career, I had significant injuries for the 2 years leading up to that, and I signed a 1-year deal. And so I said, okay, I got one more chance, at baseball. And so I was going into it knowing that my career could have taken a nosedive after that year. And I was thinking, well, I don't want to just wake up and come to this market with nothing on my resume or no experiences or no skill sets that are applicable to where I want to go. And when I talked to, some colleagues and mentors in the space, some of them were in medical device sales and whatnot. And they're like, hey, yeah, baseball players or sports usually are successful in sales, and that's probably somewhere you could go. And by the way, I did not think I was going to be in sales when I was in college. I was a kinesiology major. I thought maybe I was going to be a physical therapist or a whatever. And so that was not even in my mind until later towards, like my mid-20s. And I said, okay, well, if I'm going to go into medical device sales, which I thought, because I had some peer sets that did that and made some good livings with it, then I need some sort of sales experience. And I had a colleague that just had this really unique role where it was part-time and was able to hire me for only 5 months. I was like, I'm leaving in 5 months and going back to spring training. Are you sure you want to hire me? And it's like, yep, 100%. Just come in here and just make calls. Yeah. And so it was kind of a perfect part-time, short-term experience gig that kind of got my foot in the door for the sales industry, yeah, so to speak.
Okay, so no former real sales experience. It's fair to say that you didn't have any more life skills, but not technical skills than, let's say, a early career SDR that was hired right out of college. You probably were placed in the same pod. How was your first week, if you can remember it? I mean, did you just go in and bang out making 60 calls and booking meetings, or was there Was there a learning curve there? What shocked you the most? Let me ask you a better question. When you first went in, what was it that said, oh, holy crap, what did I get myself into?
Let me answer it this way. I hated it. And when I think about the short stint that I had with the part-time cold calling, I walked in there and I was notably older than everybody else in the room. And I kind of had like, they knew that I was a professional baseball player. So it was kind of like this weird situation with like this older guy in the room that is a baseball player, I think, or something, or what is he like? And it was this room of like maybe 40 or 50 people that were either still in college because it's part-time or right out of college. And so I hated it. And I was like, what in the world am I doing? I know nothing about software. I know nothing about sales. I know nothing about this, the industry and what these business owners are going through. And so my first week was pretty horrible. I was just kind of, all right, this really stinks, for lack of a better way to put it. But then I just saw the leaderboard, and the leaderboard was something where I was just like, you know what? I actually want to be the best. And it didn't matter that I didn't like it. It didn't matter that I wasn't good at it. It didn't matter that I had to get hung up on every single time that I called, because I had no cold call pitch whatsoever. And it was horrible and I was awkward and I couldn't, I wasn't smooth talking or anything like that. I was just like, I just want to be on the top of the leaderboard because I should be on the top of the leaderboard, is how I felt. So that's where I went with that. And then if you fast forward to when my baseball career actually ended, and I got a job as a full-time account executive. And that was when it was real. Like, I am done playing baseball, and now I am in SaaS sales and I'm an account executive. It was a whirlwind for me because I had just retired. And when you play baseball, you wake up at like 11 and then you go to the field at 2 and you play at 7 at night, and then you're done at like 10 or 11. And so now I'm in a 9 to 5. And I had just gotten married, and we had just gotten pregnant, and I had just bought my first condo, and I was trying to learn everything. And so it was just like a complete and utter life 180 from where I was. And it was incredibly difficult. I can't even describe to you how painful those first couple months were, learning the complexities of a software, learning how to sell, learning the process, learning how to use a CRM, which may have been the most difficult part, clicking buttons in Salesforce, and I was just I'm like, am I staring at a screen this long? So it was a very, very big life change and a wake up call for me. And it was very tough.
And you persisted in the same way you persisted during your first, I call it phase one or innings one, as a professional baseball player. You persisted. It was a lot of practice. Looks like, from all of the writings that you've done and all of the appearances you've made, it looked like you just kept at it. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah. And I think I had a slightly different motivator, because the first experience I told you, I just, I saw the leaderboard and I wanted to, kind of essentially, I don't know, beat other people, right? Or like prove that I could be towards the top of the leaderboard. Fast forward to this role, and it was about income, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had just taken on a first mortgage. I had just gotten married. I had a kid coming, and I don't remember my salary exactly. It was probably around 30,000 or something back in that time. And I'm thinking, I have to provide income for my family. And that was my driver. It's like, I'm a provider for the family. My wife was still kind of getting her degree at the time in nursing. And so that was a huge motivator. So I basically said, I cannot fail at this. I have to prove myself. I have to get to a certain level where I can start hitting quota and start earning the money that I'm supposed to earn. Because as a salesperson, that's one of the things, it's risk versus reward, right? You only get, your salary is only half of what you really could be making.
Mm-hmm.
So the other part of it is production and hitting your sales quotas.
And so, fast forwarding a little bit, you've done that. You did that well. Clearly, you've risen up the ranks, and now it seems like you have a different motivator. I like how you introduce yourself. You want to create other leaders. Is that your new reason for existence? Because I think you've done you're great at sales. seen, you made some money in the process, and now is that the next level, is helping others achieve similar success?
Yeah, that is a really fun thing to do. And so I don't want to lose sight of, my number one motivator is still providing income for my family and setting things up for my kid. I have 3 kids now and a wife and whatnot. And so, that obviously is a huge driver for me just on a personal note. But from a professional career wise, the thing that I've really come into is the fact that when you lead other leaders, your main job is to develop other leaders and to make them the best leaders they possibly can be. And not only does that help your organization and your team and your culture and whatnot elevate and be able to accelerate by having really competent leaders, but it also selfishly helps you because the stronger leaders you have underneath you, kind of, I don't know, you could say the easier your job is, or the more bigger and better things that you can do. And so my first experience going from a manager to a director is when I had this major wake up call of, okay, I've been in a position where I I have to focus on developing myself as a manager and as a really good manager. And now I have to focus on developing other people to be good managers. So not only do I have to keep really disciplined on my leadership development, but now I have to pass it down and really create this environment that fosters their growth and development as well. And
Mhm.
it's really fun. And I think it's really fun. And I have Friday sessions. I actually just got off of it with my people leaders and with my sales directors to develop them and to continually create a space where we can be collaborative about this focus towards growth and development.
That's really a great way of saying it. I think that's probably one of the missing links in the business world today, as in what is the pathway to create other leaders? We have structured systems in place for everything else, but when it comes to rising up the ranks, it's a little bit of a figure it out by yourself. And I think some folks can benefit from people that have been there, done that ahead of them, create a structure or create a meaningful pathway for others to learn from whatever it is that you learned from. And in the process, it sounds like you probably hired and mentored hundreds of salespeople, if not more.
Yeah. Mhm.
uh, with all of that hindsight, let's kind of go back to someone that wants to consider sales as a profession or a career. And let's pretend that, I'm not 33, I'm 21, I've graduated from college. I may have heard from my family or a friend who's in sales and say, hey, you seem like an outgoing guy, or hey, you seem like you want to make money. Sales could be good for you. But that's all that I know. I haven't done an internship. I wish more companies did that, but they don't. And that's a different discussion for another day. How would I know, or how would a person know that sales is something that they should consider? Is there a set of questions that I can ask myself?
Yeah. I think I think we can break that out in a couple parts. So the first thing that comes to mind is something that I alluded to earlier. So most sales roles in the industry are going to be split in their on-target earnings, as 50% of that is going to be a base salary, which is really stable income, and 50% of that is going to be variable, which means you could earn it or you could not earn it. And so it really goes to this concept of high risk, high reward, right? Because you can jump into your first sales role out of college and potentially be in a role where if you're overperforming, you're making 6 figures immediately. You could get a 50 base and a 50 draw, and then or a 50 variable, and then you could be overperforming your quota and you can make over $100,000. So the reward is there, but the risk is there because sales is probably the biggest industry where it's easy to evaluate whether or not you're performing or not. And so if you are like every single month, you have a percentage that is very clear as to what you are contributing and what the outcome is. If you're a business analyst or if you're in FP&A, I mean, it's really harder to say like, well, how did you do the last month? Okay, you worked on projects or you did, whatever, but it's really crystal clear in sales. And typically what you see is, all right, well, if you don't achieve a certain amount, we start having hard conversations, which will add pressure to your life if you're not performing. So high risk, high reward. High risk is, all right, well, if you're not putting in the work and not learning how to do this right and getting to the right outcomes, it's going to be stressful. And if you do, and if you learn how to be a top performer and you're over quota, then it's got big rewards.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's the answer is twofold. Number one, you do want to make a higher income, coming out of the gate, and so that's attracting you to sales. But also you're brave and you're up for a challenge, and you're not afraid to be in a position where, all right, whatever, the pressure is on, and I'm going to have to go through some pressure, or potentially I get fired from a job, and I have to be okay with that because maybe that wasn't the right fit, and I can go find another job. And that's another mindset that a lot of people have to make sure that they're in, of, a little bit less stability and more potential for, some higher income.
Do you think folks, from your experience, folks that are out of college that come in, take these jobs, do you think that they understand this? They probably know of this, but do you think they understand it?
It's so funny because I just recently was asked to be this sales judge for a local university that's going through, has like a sales program, a sales club, and they're prepping for this broader national competition, and we have to select some winners. And so I'm going through some 10-15 minute pitches with them. And it's interesting when I debrief, and give them feedback on the pitch and how they handled objections and how they, opened the call and created some rapport or whatnot. This one girl yesterday, she's just like, I 100% know that I want to do sales in my career. And I was thinking, man, I had no clue what I wanted to do in my career when I was your age. And so it is really interesting to see that just that spectrum of, for whatever reason, some professionals are in college and they know exactly that they want to be in SaaS software sales, or they even have an internship or a job lined up. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which I would put myself in, where you have no clue. You literally have no clue what you're going to do with your life. And I think that is totally fine. And when you jump into sales, it's probably the easiest one to jump into and then realize that maybe you don't like it and you go somewhere else. Because as much as people don't like to admit this, everyone sells no matter what. You're influencing someone to change is essentially what sales is. You're helping them, and influencing them to make a better decision. And so let's say you're a business analyst, or I don't know, whatever role you want to call, like, you still have to work with people and colleagues and sell either your team or your manager or people in other departments, in terms of the projects that you're rolling and whatnot. So the experience that you'll get if you start in sales and determine that it's not for you and you want to go somewhere else is going to carry with you, and you're going to learn a lot. And I promise you that.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that folks can ask themselves is, what is my threshold for risk reward, right? What is my tolerance for risk reward? If you have absolutely no tolerance for risk, I don't know if sales is for you, unless you're some natural born salesperson, which I don't know how you'll be. So that's one. Anything else that you can ask yourself?
The other thing that jumps out is just the grind, right? The repetition and the hard work, and the commitment or conviction towards, being successful is something that really would stand out. If you feel as though you want to kind of limit your hours, and I'm not proposing anybody against work-life balance. You got to have your balance. But when push comes to shove, are you going to be able to do the extra prospecting, to take a call later in the evening, to, go over and beyond? And when that pressure hits, maybe you miss quota for a month, are you able to elevate yourself and be more productive and be more focused and be more, I guess focused on hitting that target, whether that means throwing some extra hours or knocking some things out of your schedule, or really focus on prioritizing the right accounts that you go for. And so really the grind and the dedication and the commitment towards, being successful is one thing that you really have to evaluate whether or not you have, within yourself or not, as you're pursuing sales.
Interesting. Same question as the first time. Do you think the folks that are coming out of a college or taking their first sales job have an understanding of the grind? Do you think they understand the activities involved? or is that still a bit of a mystery that you only get hit in the face with it when you start the job?
I would say no, unless they have an inside colleague that is in a role that they can pick their brains on. And the only reason I'm saying no is because I didn't have a clue when I started, and I was whatever, 26, 27. And I think that, yes, we can talk about things that we're talking about today, but there's so much more around. All right, are you prepared to be 9 hours a day in a CRM, logging tasks and sending emails and sending the same type of emails and reading off of a script potentially with your cold calls, and having people hang up on you or say mean things to you and having to bounce back really quickly, otherwise you'll lose your productivity. Dealing with pressure of management and having to adopt a process, and having to learn really complex softwares in some cases and understand what they do. So I think the answer, I mean, in my opinion, is they probably don't have a full picture of what that looks like when they get into it until they jump in there. So the more people like yourself can educate around what that looks like and how to be prepared, I think the better off they'll be.
Yeah, and it's funny because one of the challenges, I don't call it challenge, it's a good challenge, is to strike that balance in between being pragmatic about what the role involves, but also being motivational about the potential upside, because it's there, right? You just have to strike a balance. If you say, hey, this is going to be a grind, whatever you thought of sales as this, sexy field sales where you go out for dinners and drinks, yeah, maybe once in a while, but probably not. As an SDR, BDR somewhere, you ain't having drinks with anyone for a while. That comes like a lot later. And even then, those are not the type of interactions that quite honestly lead to a sale. People have this notion of relationship sales that I'm trying to sort of educate in the market that I really don't know if it works at scale, man. I mean, maybe you'll get a customer or two, but it's necessary, it's essential to be personable and all of that jazz. But to your point, lots of activities. Really good feedback there. I think asking those two questions alone will give you a bit of a better understanding of your own self, because I don't think we do enough reflection at a young age. It all happens like later on. For heck, I didn't start reflecting. My first job out of college was a CPA. Probably the worst job for me. I took a disc, the test, the personality assessment test, and my compliance, the C, is so low, Brandon. It's just like tiny bit beyond the baseline. And this might shock you, but I'm a CPA and I'm also a lawyer by training. Probably the worst things to do for someone that simply has no compliance. I mean, I'd be in jail if I practice as a lawyer, or because I just don't. But we don't do enough self-reflection, right? I mean, I just did it because I was like, oh, it sounds hard. It sounds like something I should do. I like some lay prestige that comes with it. And don't get me wrong, there's things that I learned in the process. But what I'm hoping to do for sales and for other careers as well is this discussion, right? And talk about pros and cons and what the job actually entails.
And I'll ask you. I think that's okay, right? And I think that when you're out of your comfort zone or your natural comfort zone, you often learn more. And it reminds me of my career journey up through this point. There was a point where I was heading up operations, and that was harder for me because it was challenging me to really think operationally and about systems and about process, and really. I guess from an innate perspective, I'm more about people management and driving towards goals and sales related. But like that experience got me out of my comfort zone and shaped so many skill sets and so many experiences that I can use. And I bet you can say the exact same thing, that like learning how to be a lawyer, learning how to be a CEO, like you're going to use, like maybe you've moved away from that now, but you're going to use some of that stuff. And that's okay because you have a little bit more of a well-rounded kind of experience set that you can bring to the table, as you continue your journey.
Well, I think it's a fair point. I can also be very irritating when I'm having, arguments and healthy debates with my wife. So it definitely helps me there. I can be very persistent and very irritating.
Yeah.
I'll ask a last line of questions, and then I'll be respectful of your time. When you start the job, one of the challenges that we're seeing in sales, and tech sales in particular, followed by financial services sales, attrition is a huge problem. It looks like year 1, year 2 attrition is north of 35%. Like 1 in 3 people either are fired or quit. And I'm trying to figure out if we can somehow reduce that. What are the things that you could or should be doing early on in the initial few months? If you do ask yourself these questions, say, yes, 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 I'm excited. This is me. Risk reward, check. Grind, check. You get a job. What can I do to maximize my chances of succeeding?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll answer your question in a different way, because I agree that there is an attrition issue in the industry. And as a person that owns the full revenue function in the org now in my role, I take ownership of that. And I think that part of the problem is the way that we set new salespeople up for success. Like, do we have them equipped to achieve success with the process that we're giving, with the playbook that we're going to put right in front of them to say, this is how you become successful, with effective or intelligent quota setting so that expectations aren't crazy out the door, because most reps are leaving because they're underpaid. But underpaid really when you dig down is just that they're missing quota, and so they're not hitting what the on target earnings that they've signed up for, right? Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, they're not set up for success. So I'll take ownership from that side of it, as like, well, we as leaders need to make sure that they are set up for success when they walk in the door, and that's something that I'm constantly challenged with. From an individual perspective, when a new salesperson jumps in, I think the number one thing that needs to be done is to drop the ego. Any ego you have whatsoever, whether you're a brand new sales rep, whether you've got 20 years of experience, just make it hit the floor now. Day one, drop the ego. You are a baby. You are a rookie. You are a newbie. Learn. And the reason you do that is because you immediately frame yourself in a position where you have to learn. You want to learn. You recognize that you need to learn. And you turn into a sponge and you just say, okay, I am in a new spot. Teach me everything, and I will change everything that I've known in the past. And I'm willing to adopt certain things and certain methodologies and whatnot. So that's step number one. Drop your ego immediately. Number two is to go find the people that have already paved the path for success. I mean, it's weird how many salespeople will jump into an organization and be afraid to go talk to the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reps on the leaderboard. They don't even want it. Like they feel like it's this mysterious, people over here that have this secret sauce, and they don't go to, like, I mean, go buy them lunch, go buy them coffee, figure out how to pick their brain. And the reason for that isn't necessarily that you're going to copy or replicate everything they're doing, because that is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. But it's to just understand what they're doing and starting to pick and learn and see what types of things they're focused on, because they're going to have strengths and weaknesses as well. Mm-hmm. And so you really just got to pick out the strengths there. And then the last one, which goes kind of hand in hand, is really just continually commit yourself to not only continual development and continual learning, but to practice. And those are different, and I'll explain them. So continual development and continual learning is acquiring new skill sets. So that's where you go through your sales training program, or you learn new things or new tips and trips or strategies or methodologies and whatnot. But then that has to be followed up with practice, which is repetition of what you're learning, and evaluation of how you're doing it, and then adaptation of making it better. So I think of practice because obviously I played baseball, and guess what? I took hundreds of thousands of swings in my career, the same exact swing. All I did was go like this. It's the same exact thing, but I practiced it so much because you have to refine it and perfect it. So the continual development is like, okay, let's learn how to handle this objection. Cool. All right. That's some new skill set that I learned. And that's continual development. Where practice comes in is, let me nail this objection handling, pitch. Let me say it over and over and over. Let me practice it on a weekly basis, so that when it comes, it's almost like I love that I got that objection, because I've practiced this so much and I'm just nailing it now. So those two things, and that's the difference, the way I see those two, and what I think you need to focus on to be successful.
That's an incredibly helpful feedback for folks, and I'm sure that people would appreciate it. One of the things that I don't know if people know, when you said that you've practiced swinging a bat, but how many times? 10,000 times. I watched a video recently, and one of the things that I didn't know, but I learned is, I guess you have about 150 milliseconds to make a decision on the ball, and that's faster than the blink of an eyelid. That is nuts to me that you had to make the decision 10,000 times. You probably already know this, but it just blew my mind. That's so fast, and people are getting faster. It's crazy. But again,
you definitely have to guess. And the other thing that's funny about baseball is you have to pick up the spin of the laces on the ball during that period of time as well, because if it's spinning this way, it's going to fall out of the strike zone. If it's spinning this way, it's going to come straight. So it's it's a little nuts.
That's crazy, man. I can barely see the ball. You're talking about seeing the spin on the ball. That's crazy. This is great, Brandon. Thank you so much for some thoughtful guidance and feedback. One of the things that I appreciated the most about what you said when I asked you, how can you position yourself for success in the job, is, again, coming to the same theme of taking this kind of extreme ownership. As you started with you said, what is it that I can do as a leader to ensure that folks have a good deck of cards that I've dealt so that they can actually be successful. I will control what I can, and then folks can, people that are doing the job can control what they can. This is incredibly great. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
I loved it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good one.
You too.